What's up, y'all? Good morning. It's your boy Romance live from Franceland. Today's going to be day 4 of Alexander the Great, and we're going to review a few things first and foremost before we get into today's show. Number one, as always, you can watch this on Facebook, but like I said, if I catch you watching on Facebook and you don't watch it on YouTube, I will whip your ass. Watch it on goddamn YouTube or I'll whoop your ass. Alright? Get it through your skulls. Go on Facebook. I don't care if you write Mary had a little lamb in the fucking comments. Put something. Like something. Subscribe to my ass or I will hurt you. You understand that? Number 2. Yesterday I made some mistakes, okay? And I apologize about that. I called Darius. I said the words Darius the First and Darius the Second. Alright? Alexander the Great was always going to be fighting Darius the Second. If I said Darius the First yesterday, I apologize. Darius the First lived at least 200 years. He built the Persian Empire. So Darius the First couldn't be, Darius the Second was pretty much the last emperor. Darius the First was the first emperor, and it sometimes gets confusing. All right, third off, I want to give you the sources. Now, when I do, any historian, anybody who takes history for real, any professor, they will cite sources. They will cite ancient sources, and I'm going to give you the sites that the people I am citing. All right, number 1, even though Herodotus lived probably 100 some years, at least 100 years before Alexander ever existed, I use a lot of his writings to learn about the Persians. He wrote a great deal about the Persians, and we know a wealth of knowledge about the entire world before Alexander from Herodotus. Now, Herodotus is a great historian, but he's also known as the father of lies. All right, next you got Plutarch. He's a Roman that was writing in the 1st century AD, just before Julius Caesar's reign, okay? He's another liar. He was more into selling books than telling the truth, but he said he wrote so many books, there's a wealth of shit that he said that unexpectedly, whether it's lies or bullshit, like we somehow can deduce facts from what he wrote. There's something called the Vulgate. All right, now the Vulgate is like a collection of, like, I don't even understand really what it is, but it's just like popular letters laying around from the Roman era, from like soldiers writing to each other and shit that would have come down to us that don't have names attached to it. So it's just called the Vulgate. Vulgate, that means like kind of common tongue in Latin. And then the number 1 source of information we have on Alexander is strangely enough from one of his top generals, Ptolemy. Ptolemy kept meticulous notes of the whole time they were traveling, from day 1 through the end of the campaign, when Alexander died, to him founding his own dynasty in Egypt. He kept very, very good records. So much of what I'm telling you, we know because of Ptolemy, believe it or not. And Ptolemy wasn't just a writer and a historian. He was, like many Greeks, he was a Renaissance man. And he was a scientist, he was an astronomer, all kinds of shit, man. That guy was the bomb. So, all right, so let's get into the show today. We left yesterday, and another mistake I made is that I said that Darius died in the next battle after Isis. It is true, but we did not get to that battle yet. We're going to get to that either today's show or tomorrow's show. But you got to know that after the Battle of Isis, we're almost in eastern Turkey, and basically Turkey is a promenade, a flank of land that moves westward over the Mediterranean, north over the Mediterranean Ocean, and it kind of forms a corner right around where like Turkey meets Syria. Well, Alexander's going southward now. He's no longer in Turkey. He's going south along the Levantine coast, down through Syria. He's picking off city after city as he goes. Most places are capitulating, opening the doors to him. But in the ancient world, the greatest naval battles and naval people and the greatest, the shipbuilders were the Phoenicians. In fact, the alphabet, phonetics, that word comes from Phoenicians. They created the alphabet that we know today. And because they were traders, it was they who spread their alphabet, and a lot of us now, you know, the Greeks used it, the Romans used it, the Judeo-Christians used it, and so on and so forth. So their alphabet came down to us. But anyway, there was 2 cities in Phoenicia, Tyre and Sidon. Now Sidon is just a promenade of land that's a peninsula. They had recently rebelled against the Persians. A lot of people did not like the Persians. I'll get into that in a minute. So they opened their doors to Alexander, Sidon. But Tyre is another city. And both these cities are basically like carports for ships. Like these are cities that are like dock cities. It's all about shipping there. So Tyre is a major naval port. It sits about 1.5 miles off the coast on an island, okay? And they resisted. They had their navy in port at the moment. They're like, there's no way this guy can take us. Well, it was Alexander the Great. He'll be damned if he's going to let something like water stop him from attacking your city. And in typical Alexander the Great fashion, in one of his greatest sieges of, I mean, I spoke yesterday of some of the sieges he did, and I can't just get into it without graphics, without actors, without, you know, like more high-tech shit than I'm working with. But basically what he did was this. Let's think of it like from here to a mile out, okay, there's water. There's ships coming at you, and they're firing at you, and you got an army. Probably at that point, Alexander still had a lot of Greeks with him at that point. His army was probably about 50,000 to 75,000 strong. The Persian army was so big that you could apparently they were 1 million strong. Like when they stopped to drink water with all the horses and donkeys and camels and shit and all the people, like they would stop to get water and rivers would dry up when they went for a drink. That's how big the Persian army was. Well, Alexander's sitting there, he builds a wall, and on the top of the wall, he got his men shooting, firing arrows, fighting back, and then below the wall is, you know, is construction guys with hard hats on, building a little rampway out to this city a mile out. And sure enough, it took him a couple months, but he built a freaking road, a promenade across that water to that city, beat the shit out of them for fucking resisting him, and he raised the city. But this time he left 1 inhabitant. Instead of killing killing the leader and leaving the population, he did that a lot. This time he killed the entire population, but left the king. Wiped out the whole city, left the king. His whole plan of doing this was, what happened was they had the navy. That was the Persian navy. That was where they were stationed in that city. Well, he didn't have much of a navy to work with. He had a land army. He had infantry. And his plan was, I won't let the navy attack me on water. I'll defeat their navy from land. And that's basically what he did. He made his own ramp up to the city of Tyre, brought that baby down, and destroyed it. Okay, the name of his leader there was Azamilk. He was Semitic. All the Phoenicians were. They were an offshoot of the Jews, really. If you ever read the story of Jezebel in the Bible, they worship the god Bel, the fire god, and we'll get into that a little bit more soon too. But if you don't think that siege was enough, all right, he gets Tyre, he gets Sidon, he conquers Phoenicia. He's still going south down the Levantine coast, all right? And he hits the city of Gaza. You hear about Gaza all the time in the news. It's in Palestine, and there's always problems there. The Arabs fighting Jews and crap. He gets to Gaza, and they had a Persian satrap. A satrap is a Persian governor that refused to give up. But this time it was on land, it wasn't on water. So he basically did the same thing, only like, you're talking desert heat, bro. You're talking like he had to build, the walls of that city are probably 30, 40 feet tall. Buckets of sand. Builds a mountain on the side of the wall. The same thing. He has a wall of people holding shields. A wall of guys firing back at the people firing at him. And then behind that, construction dudes in hard hats building shit to go kill these motherfuckers. That is how he did it. And he took, if you thought, I mean, from what the sources I get, like, wow, the siege of Tyre was impressive. But apparently the siege of Gaza was even more impressive, man. Like, all the shit he had to deal with, all the fucking scorpions, the snakes. Anyway, he conquers Gaza, he conquers Palestine. Now, by the time he gets to Egypt, okay, Egypt, remember, the Persians had, no Greeks had been allowed to travel in Egypt or the Middle East, in Babylon, and none of that shit. Like, the only way the Greeks could go was west and north, and they didn't like either of those directions. All of the world to the Greeks was south and east of them. Well, you know, when he got to Egypt, they pretty much opened their doors. No statues exist in Egypt today. No shit on walls that they carved. Nothing. There's no evidence of the Persian kings. There's evidence of the Nubian kings that they conquered, that, you know, were pharaohs before them. There's evidence of all the Egyptian pharaohs before them. There's barely any record in Egypt left of the Persians. Now, the Persians had a lot of success in conquering. They had the biggest country in the world, the biggest empire in the world at that time. And a lot of their success was how they treated the royalty everywhere they went. They kind of left things in place and just said, look, as long as you worship, as long as you realize we're the kings, you can keep everything the same as it was. So we won't touch you. And a lot of what the Persians did was just leave things in place. But they were total dicks about religion. Their religion was, they were one of the, they were monotheists, a lot of the Persians. They worshipped a god named Mithrander and Mithridates or something like that. And then on top of it, you know, they did stupid shit. Like in Egypt, religion, it was a huge deal to the Egyptians. Since like time immemorial, before anyone could write it down, since something like 4000 BC, they had what was called the Apis Bull Festival. For some reason, they worshipped a bull, and that bull was sacred, and they had that bull got to like mate with all kinds of other bulls its whole life. And when another bull was born, it had to have a white body with a black mark on its head, like a certain way. And then another Apis bull would be born, and then the other one would die, and that would be, they wouldn't like eat it, they would mummify it and worship it and shit. All right, the Persians ended that practice, okay? That really pissed off the Egyptians. So when Alexander got to Egypt, he was welcomed with open arms, okay? There was no fight. On top of it, Alexander, no Greeks had ever seen Egypt, man. There's more wonders in Egypt than there are almost anywhere else, man. Like, it was like a brand new territory. They couldn't believe their eyes. This was this new world. It must have been amazing. And at this point, you know, we're talking 332 BC. Alexander's just like 24, 25 years old, and all his boys that he's rolling with are the same age. Like, these must have been a gang of like college kids just having the time of their lives, man. But Alexander, first, he went to Memphis. Memphis is the city where the pyramids are, a lot of the monuments are. It's basically where Lower Egypt and Southern Egypt meet, and the two lands, quote unquote, meet. That's the main city. That's where Cairo's at today. It's the biggest city. But that wasn't good enough for Alexander. Of course, he founded a new city. Alexander would go on to found, I think, 17 cities named Alexandria. But the big one and the greatest city in the ancient world later on would become Alexandria in Egypt. That's where all the Ptolemies ruled from. That's where Cleopatra lived. That's where the Romans ruled out of when they conquered Egypt. He founded Alexandria, and again, in Alexander fashion. Now, something that has been eaten alive at Alexander the whole time, this has been going on since day one, since he left his mother back in Pella, which is a city in Macedon. She told him before he left, look, Philip in Macedon is not your dad. I had sex with Zeus, okay? Zeus is your dad. So this is eating Alexander alive. Why do I keep winning? Why am I so good? Am I a god? Am I a god? Now, in the ancient world, there's two famous oracles. Okay, an oracle is a place where you go to try to find the future or what the will of the gods is. Now, the most famous oracle in the world is in Greece at Delphi. Okay, that's the Pythias. That's the oracle of Apollo. There's a bunch of women who get like all doped up on some kind of steam that comes out of the ground, and they like trip out and they babble in a different language, and somehow another person hears what that woman is saying and they interpret it. All right, in the middle of the Western desert. I mean, Egypt is just a strip of land around the Nile River. The rest of the shit is desert, except for a little patch of oasis way the fuck out in the Western desert. To get like Alexander heard about this, okay? It's called Siwa, the Siwa Oasis. To get there, he took just a bunch of his retinue of his best boys, told him he was one of them, and he wrote this all down. This is how we know it. He took Hephaestion with him. He took Antigonus. Antigonus ended up taking over the northern half of the Asian Empire after Alexander died. This place is so deep in the desert. The only way to get there is to follow snakes when they need to drink. Ooh, I never want to go there, but all right. So you got to follow snakes and scorpions to get there. They probably showed up half dead, and this was the oracle of Amun. Amun is the chief god of the Egyptian pantheon, and the closest thing that there is to him in Greece is Zeus. Okay, the father of the gods. So this to Alexander, he was going to see the temple of the oracle of Zeus. And when he got there, the oracle kind of worked like somehow you go into a real dark like room that's very dimly lit. There's a bunch of these little boats in water, and somehow like a priest can tell the future from how the boats move in the water. And then you go up a little further and you talk to a statue of a god, and then the statue talks back to you. There's like a priest behind it, like working it like a robot or whatever. Nobody knows what Alexander asked, but it's thought that he asked it, am I a god? And the other question he asked is, what do I do when I get to the end of the earth? How should I sacrifice to the gods? He didn't know. He really did think that when he got to the end of the world, he was going to somehow get to the outer level where the gods live. He thought he was going to somehow meet the gods once he got to the edge of the earth. He did seem to think the earth was flat. And I know he had people that were on his team that knew the world was round. So I don't know what the hell was going through his mind. But anyway, I'm going to stop the video there in Egypt for today. A little long-winded. I apologize. My name is Romance. This is The World According to Romance. Have a good one, folks. Peace.